Therefore, the understanding that should be garnered from this discussion should not be such that migration is obligatory. No, not at all. But rather the establishment of an Islamic society, a Tawheed-oriented society, this is what is obligatory on every place on the earth. Because as the verse that I've just quoted earlier says, the earth indeed belongs to God, and he gives its inheritance to whoever he wishes of his servants, and the outcome is for the God-wary. I wanted to make this clear, very clear, since, as I've mentioned, there have been some people speaking somewhat irresponsibly about the notion of migration and misconstruing this idea that people in places like the collective West should migrate to the Islamic societies, as mentioned. This is completely incorrect analysis and thinking. Rather, the task for those who follow and accept and believe in the prophethood of Prophet Muhammad, of the Messenger of God, the real task is to develop and build a Tawheed-oriented society wherever they are, in every corner of the world. Now, I'm not going to digress any further on this topic. Perhaps it can be covered later if required, but for now, this clarification will suffice. Returning to the verses that we were discussing, we now move to verse 73 of Surah Anfal, the chapter of the spoils of war, the 8th chapter of Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, "As for the faithless, they are allies of one another. Unless you do the same, there will be strife in the land and great corruption." As for the faithless, they are allies of one another. Even if they are in two different camps, they are united in their hostility toward you. Unless you do the same, there will be strife in the land and great corruption. Perhaps what this verse means is that if you are not united, if you do not stand together, if you do not present a united front to the enemies of God, and if you do not realize that whoever is standing between the two sides may as well be on the side of the enemy, then there will be a great tribulation and corruption in the land. Strife, the word fitna, here probably means to be far from religion or deen, while corruption, fasad, means the disappearance of God's laws from society. Now we should pay very close attention to this next verse, which is verse number 74 of the same chapter, Surah Anfal, the chapter of the spoils of war, the 8th chapter of Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, "Those who have believed, migrated, and struggled in the way of God, and those who gave them shelter and help, it is they who are truly the faithful. For them shall be forgiveness and a noble provision." Do you see? These are the true believers. As for those who believe but have not migrated, struggled, or given shelter or help, who are they? They are not true believers. They are false believers. That is the meaning of this verse. And it should be noted that the explanation I gave earlier about migration applies here also. Rather, the priority, or perhaps we could say, we could explain migration in this context as meaning those who work to establish a Tawheed-oriented society wherever they may be, in every part of the world, an Islamic society in every part of the world.